When my husband suggested a road trip, I thought it would save our marriage. Just the two of us. No work. No distractions. No pressure. I imagined long drives, laughter, beautiful views, and somehow finding the connection we had lost over the years. But somewhere between the endless highways, the quiet motel rooms, and the painful conversations we could no longer avoid, I realized this trip wasn't bringing us closer the way I expected. It was forcing us to confront truths we had both been hiding for far too long. And what happened during that journey changed my life forever. People think relationships collapse in dramatic moments. Most of the time, they don't. They fade slowly. Quietly. Like headlights disappearing into fog. By the time my husband suggested the road trip, we had become experts at pretending everything between us was normal. We still laughed occasionally. Still shared meals. Still existed together in the same house. But emotionally? We were miles apart long before we ever packed our bags. "You know what we need?" he asked one evening while scrolling through travel videos on his phone. "What?" "To disappear for a few days." I laughed softly. "That sounds illegal." "No phones. No work. No stress. Just driving." At first, I almost refused. Not because I didn't want the trip. Because I was afraid of what silence might reveal between us once distractions disappeared. But eventually I agreed. And 3 days later, we were driving along endless highways beneath gray morning skies with luggage packed in the back seat and old music playing softly through the speakers. For the first few hours, things actually felt good. Lighter. Almost familiar again. We joked about terrible roadside restaurants, argued playfully about music choices, and stopped at random gas stations simply because the freedom felt exciting. And somewhere during those early hours, I remembered why I fell in love with him in the first place. That realization hurt more than I expected. Because when love fades slowly, memory becomes painful. The second day changed the atmosphere between us completely. Road trips sound romantic in theory. Endless roads. Beautiful scenery. Emotional conversations under open skies. Reality feels different after hours trapped inside a moving vehicle with someone you no longer fully understand. Silence grows louder. Small habits become irritating. And unresolved emotions suddenly have nowhere to hide. We stopped at a small motel late that evening after driving through heavy rain for hours. The neon vacancy sign flickered weakly outside while thunder rolled somewhere far beyond the mountains. Inside the room, exhaustion settled between us immediately. "You've been quiet all day," he said while removing his jacket. "I'm just tired." That answer again. I looked away. Because the truth was more complicated. I wasn't just tired. I was emotionally conflicted. Being alone together again forced me to confront how disconnected we had become over the years. Somewhere between routines, responsibilities, and emotional neglect, we stopped seeing each other clearly. And now there was nowhere left to escape from that reality. "You ever feel like we became strangers slowly?" I asked quietly. The question lingered heavily inside the room. He sat silently on the edge of the bed before answering. "Honestly? Sometimes." That honesty hit harder than any argument could have. Because deep down, I already knew it was true. The storm outside intensified that night. Rain crashed violently against motel windows while dim yellow lights cast long shadows across the room. Sleep became impossible. So we talked instead. Really talked. For the first time in years. Not about bills. Or schedules. Or responsibilities. About us. About loneliness. About resentment neither of us admitted out loud before. "You stopped talking to me," I confessed quietly. "You stopped listening," he replied. The painful thing about honesty is how quickly it exposes years of emotional damage people pretend doesn't exist. Conversation after conversation uncovered things we buried beneath routine for far too long. Moments we ignored. Feelings we avoided. Needs we never communicated honestly. At one point he looked directly at me and asked something unexpected. "Are you still happy with me?" I opened my mouth immediately. Then stopped. Because for the first time in years, I genuinely didn't know the answer. That silence between us changed everything. Not dramatically. Not explosively. Quietly. Like something invisible finally breaking apart. The next morning felt different. Not better. Just more honest. As we continued driving through empty highways and small forgotten towns, I noticed things about him I had ignored for years. The tiredness in his eyes. The way he gripped the steering wheel when stressed. How often he glanced at me before looking away again. And strangely, I began realizing he probably noticed changes in me too. That frightened me. Because people rarely wake up one day emotionally disconnected. It happens gradually while both people pretend not to notice. By afternoon, we stopped near a cliffside overlooking miles of open landscape beneath cloudy skies. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then finally he said quietly, "I think we lost ourselves somewhere." Not you. Not me. Us. That distinction mattered. Because blame is easy. Self-awareness is harder. And standing there beside endless empty roads, I realized the trip wasn't fixing our relationship. It was exposing it. Exposing all the emotional distance we buried beneath routine and comfort. And somehow, that honesty felt strangely freeing. When we finally returned home days later, everything looked exactly the same. Same house. Same routines. Same life. But internally, I had changed permanently. Because that road trip forced me to confront truths I spent years avoiding. That emotional neglect destroys relationships slowly. That silence becomes dangerous when left unspoken too long. And that pretending happiness exists doesn't create it. Nothing dramatic happened after the trip. No explosive ending. No public collapse. Instead, something quieter happened. Awareness. We started speaking differently afterward. More honestly. More carefully. Sometimes painfully honestly. Not because the road trip magically repaired everything. Because it forced us to finally stop pretending. And maybe that's what changed my life forever. Not the highways. Not the motels. Not the stormy nights. But the realization that relationships don't survive through routine alone. They survive through emotional presence. Through honesty. Through people choosing to truly see each other again before it's too late. And somewhere between those endless roads and difficult conversations, I finally understood that. Looking back now, I realize the road trip was never really about travel. It was about truth. About two people finally being forced to sit still long enough to confront the emotional distance growing silently between them. Some journeys don't change your location. They change you. And somewhere between the rainstorms, empty roads, and difficult conversations, I finally understood how easily people can lose each other while pretending everything is fine. If this emotional and suspenseful story touched you, surprised you, or made you reflect on love, loneliness, and relationships, Backhand Index Pointing Right, subscribe now for more unforgettable stories filled with emotional tension, secrets, and life-changing moments. Disclaimer. This fictional story is created for entertainment purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised.